Once upon a time, there was this amazing lady named Saltanat Nukenova. She was strong, doing her own thing, living her life independently. But there was trouble lurking around the corner in the form of her husband, a man Geldi. He was not your regular nice guy, he was more like a meanie, full of himself and not caring about others. One chilly November night, as the clock struck midnight, Saltanat got a text from her brother, a man Geldi. It wasn't the first time she tried to leave him, maybe it was like the 12th time or so. Back in September, she came home from work only to find a big mess in her room. Lipstick marks, makeup all over the place, and the smell of something fishy in the air. Yep, you guessed it right, there were even 2 used condoms in the toilet. That was it for Saltanat. She was done with this nonsense. Her family backed her up, ready to help her move on from this mess. But guess what? Just when they thought it was over, Saltanat surprised everyone by renewing her wedding vows with the man Geldi. She fell for his smooth talk, his promises to change for the better. Oh boy, was she in for a ride. But fate had other plans. That very day, something terrible happened. Emergency services rushed to a fancy restaurant in the capital city of Kazakhstan. It was like a scene from a thriller movie, but this was real life, and Saltanat was right in the middle of it all. What happened next? Well, that's a tale for another time. But one thing's for sure, Saltanat's story teaches us a valuable lesson about love, trust, and the dangers of falling for the wrong person. Reportedly, there was a quarrel between some visitors which resulted in a woman succumbing to her injuries. The B restaurant is located in Gastro Center, the building owned by Quick's extended family, in arguably the most affluent part of the city, right next to the Ritz-Carlton and across the road from government offices where prominent businessmen and officials often come to wine and dine. Upon their arrival, police are greeted by Quan Bichet. He explains that he had an argument with his wife that night, wherein things got heated between them. She tripped and hit her head on the toilet, resulting in bruising. He removed the clumps of hair from her head, placed them on the table, and laid her down to rest. He slept beside her, but after he woke up from his sleep, she continued to snore. A few hours later, despite attempts to revive her with the help of his cousin, they were unsuccessful. She remained unresponsive, and they decided to call for help, heading to the VIP room. The police saw mess clothes were hanging off the furniture, the floor was littered with items, the table had glasses and empty wine bottles along with a broken watch, jewelry, clips of hair, and a red-stained napkin. The adjacent curtains had brown and red stains on it. But what caught their attention was the restroom. The door had a hole through it, and there were visibly broken tiles inside with some blood as well, clear signs that some degree of violence had transpired before their arrival. On the sofa lay a woman wrapped in a blanket. Walking closer, as she came into focus, it was clear that her face was barely recognizable, extremely bruised, red, and swollen. Her body was cold to touch. She had no pulse, and she had been gone for quite some time. There was nothing police or paramedical could do to save her. The woman was identified as Saltanat Nukenova, the 31-year-old wife of K. On Bave. At the scene was also Kwak's cousin, Bazan Banov, the director of the Gastro Center, the building where the restaurant is located. Both men were questioned by the police. Kwak was well known in 2016. He was Minister of National Economy, and just 6 months into his office, he was accused of accepting bribes. He was compelled to resign and was convicted of the crime in March 2018. While he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, he was released a year and a half later and officially pardoned soon thereafter. However, in his civilian life, he lived a life of luxury, being a shareholder in the family's businesses. His father was a prominent political figure, which afforded him a life of luxury, and he was groomed from a young age to hold politically powerful positions in the government to serve and lead his country. However, the actions that would come to light would soon prove just how far the apple has fallen from the tree. After brief questioning at the scene, both men were arrested. The postmortem report would later reveal that Nukenova suffered 13 blows through the head alone, caused by blunt force trauma. Her entire face was covered in multiple bruises, cuts, and abrasions. She suffered severe head injury, and her nose was shattered into pieces. The left side of her face, especially, had multiple wounds which continued down and around her chin. She suffered from subdural hematoma, which is when blood collects between the skull and the surface of the brain. In her case, she had 230 ml, or a glass full of blood that had collected. Left untreated, this causes brain herniation or areas of the brain that are moved around their original position due to the pressure and swelling. Her death was due to vital life-sustaining functions of the central nervous system being disrupted, such as her breathing and her heart. Beyond this, she had marks and signs of strangulation. The toxicology report determined there were no drugs or medication in her blood, and only low levels of alcohol were present. To unravel what led to this tragedy, we must first go back to where it all began. Saltanat Nukenova was born into a respected family in Kazakhstan in 1992. Her grandfather, an honored teacher, had a judo tournament organized in his memory. Her father built a successful business, and her uncle, Coercion, had a respectable political career as a governor. Her family loved and supported her and her brother equally. They covered her education expenses when she wanted to go to England for her university studies. During this time, she developed an interest in psychology, astrology, and meditation. After a brief tenure in the banking industry, she decided to quit her job and forge a new career in these topics that interested her. Saltanat took several courses in astrology and started conducting personal consultations. She quickly became a popular astrologer, with people booking consultations with her weeks in advance. Her charismatic appeal and adeptness at weaving psychology sessions with community events by also inviting others in her field skyrocketed her popularity in the industry. She would exclusively see women or couples, but never men alone. Financially, she was successful and could independently support herself and her brother. Said she never once asked her family for money. Her future plans included becoming a TV presenter and a YouTube personality, ambitions that her family wholeheartedly believed she would be successful in. Her brother Atk said she was not just an astrologer but went out of the way to help people out of troubling situations in their life, such as one occasion where they helped a friend escape from her abusive husband. This had occurred over 10 years in the past before her career had even begun. The irony of this situation is that she was able to help others escape but not herself. Saltanat, being the young and attractive woman, caught the attention of Courtship through her Instagram account, which was shown to him by a mutual friend. Despite his interest, Saltanat's assistant turned down his appointment request as she didn't conduct sessions for men. A woman named Camila, who claimed to be coming with a man, managed to book a session. However, she arrived alone and revealed that a mutual friend, a man, wanted to meet Saltanat. During their conversation, Camila obtained Sultan's personal number, which she shared with Pishinbayev. From around May 2022, Pishinbayev started sending Saltanat poems and insisted on meeting her. Saltanat, who was more interested in helping her female clients than dating, refused his advances for over a month. However, in June, she ended a 3-year relationship with her boyfriend. She was not ready for a new relationship and simply wanted to focus on her work, studies, and astrology courses. Pishinbayev, however, managed to find Saltanat at her favorite establishment one morning. He walked up to her, introduced himself, said he happened to be driving past, and saw her through the window. He struck up a conversation about psychology, and their courtship began from there. A few months later, Pishinbayev invited Saltanat to a concert by Valery Madzi, and in October that same year, they visited a friend in Baku, the capital city of Azerbaijan, together. After this trip together, it seems, after months of pursuit, Bisha finally won the heart of Saltanat. Upon her return, she spoke fondly of Bisha and expressed the desire to help him with his difficult family relationships. Her brother summarized that she fell in love and idolized this man. But who exactly is Courtship Bisha? The then 43-year-old mystery man with a complicated past, to say the least? Other than his failed political career mentioned earlier, Pishinbayev was raised around a life of luxury. He attended the Ivy League George Washington University and had a fast-tracked political career, holding several positions as an advisor and a VP before being promoted to Minister of Economy in 2016. After his career came crashing down in just 6 months, he was able to recover within 2 years and continued his life of luxury thanks to the income he'd received from being a shareholder in the various family-owned businesses. He was previously married for 14 years and had 4 children, but during the time of courtship, he was reportedly single and adamant on pursuing Saltanat. Within the same year, in December 2022, Saltanat and Pishinbayev decided to get married. Despite her parents' reservations about her marrying a man who had been married before, had 4 children, but most glaringly, a fraud conviction, they accepted her decision. The couple organized a Kazakh wedding ceremony known as NCA. Due to some outdated database information on Pishinbayev, they weren't officially married on the register but went through with the religious ceremony, and Saltanat was recognized as his de facto wife. After the ceremony, less than a month from the wedding, after New Year's 2023, Saltanat began experiencing physical violence. She didn't share much about this with anyone, but her brother ATK realized she was in trouble. In February, the couple went on honeymoon to Maldives. During this time, Atek had a lengthy conversation with his sister, urging her to leave her husband. To reassure him, Saltanat sent photos showcasing their happiness together. Apek detested her husband and refused to open these photos because he didn't want to see Bishbev's face. These photos were later used by Bishbev's defense as evidence they were happy and to disregard his abusive behavior at the time. Ironically, though, Sultan's lawyers pointed out visible signs of beatings on her body in these photos. On the night of March 20, 2023, Saltanat sent her brother 2 photos showing signs of physical abuse and asked him to keep them. She feared that her husband, who had full access to her iPhone, would delete them upon seeing the photos. Her brother confronted Bishay, leading to a fight. Following the fight, Saltanat was seen less frequently by everyone as her husband forbade her from seeing her friends and family. She did communicate they would often fight but didn't disclose the details with anyone. It wasn't until after her death that her family and friends truly started to piece together and grasp the extent of the abuse she had suffered those few months. Bishbeve was a controlling husband. He forbade Saltanat from working. She had to cancel all her sessions, which stopped her booming career, and she became financially dependent on him. She was also restricted from meeting her friends, which severely limited her social life. When her brother suggested she leave her husband, she asked if her brother could provide for her until she could get back on her feet. She also told her brother that Bishbev also demanded to keep a nude video of her as collateral in case she ever left him. He would release it to the public, ruining her reputation. She mentioned this to her friend, that she was perpetually stuck in a hopeless situation with a constant shadow of physical violence and living in a state of fear and consequences. After Salt's murder, it was confirmed in court that her husband had demanded she record a nude video to ensure she wouldn't blackmail him with all the photos of her beatings. He later used this video to control her. In a state of fear and facing physical violence, Saltanat felt she had no choice but to comply. She described her situation as hopeless in a message to a friend. Her last night alive, on November 8, 2023, Sutana was given tickets to a concert of a popular Russian singer, Dima Band, by a friend. Her husband is a huge fan of his, and she accepted 2 free tickets to go with her friend. During that concert, a woman approached them and kissed her husband on the cheeks. Reportedly, this sparked an argument between them. Considering her husband's history of infidelity, they left the concert early and went to the Bao restaurant. CCTV can see them walking in and out of the restaurant and talking at several occasions at the entrance to the building below. Reportedly, the argument persisted because Bishbev, who also accused his wife of hanging on to her past relationships, and she had reportedly had enough. Over the course of the night, they had several physical altercations, many of them off camera, but bruises and cuts on her face show evidence of fresh wounds she didn't have earlier when they went to the concert. At some point, she called her brother and told him she was leaving her husband but never left. Fishin have admitted in court she told him she wanted to leave. He said he reasoned with her to sleep on her decision and think again with a fresh mind in the morning. Instead, when they entered the restaurant later around 7 a.m. that morning, she was beaten again so badly she didn't survive. Quick and Saltanat are first shown entering the Bao restaurant just before 9:15 on November 8th. They're next seen walking outside 45 minutes past midnight. It's clear they're having a disagreement. Kwand reaches out with an overcoat to Salan, which she eventually refuses to take and walks away, but later puts it on after a short chat. They both return inside. You can really notice the difference in body language. Salty is on her phone around the time she spoke to her brother. Kwand immediately peeks over to take a look, and you can see from her body language she's frustrated by this. It's 1 a.m. now and their disagreement continues. She stands in the corner, he starts smoking. They continued to talk to each other. According to Quick's testimony, he was trying to calm her down because she said she wanted to leave him. He said things like, "Relax, asleep now, think it over in the morning with a fresh mind." They continue talking while guests are entering and leaving. It's clear from their hand gestures this isn't a friendly discussion but a disagreement over personal matters. At the trial, Kwande's defense team are pointing out how she's so intoxicated she can barely stand up herself for 1 minute. But the prosecution side interjects stating the defense team are not experts in body language and not to draw any incorrect conclusions. In court, Bishaya denies all guilt for causing his wife's death. Instead, he said that she, under the influence of alcohol, made false claims, insulted, and provoked him during their argument. She attacked him, and he pushed her back, slapping her 4 times with his open palm so as not to hurt her, and then carefully kicking her in her thighs and buttocks so as not to hurt her. The trial of Coercion Pei-V was broadcasted on YouTube began in Anna on March 11, 2024. Pei-V insisted upon a public trial himself, believing the country would sympathize with his side of the events. But clearly, being raised in a life of luxury, he instead displayed how out of touch he was with Kazakh society. He aimed to appeal to conservative societal norms, emphasizing his wife's alleged inappropriate behavior and addiction. However, this backfired as the hypocrisy of his defense team's actions to slander her character when the CCTV camera showed him as the only aggressor and the history of their marriage led to her losing not just her friend's career, but also her life in such a short time. It garnered him no sympathy from the majority of the people. People publicly protested, with women and men holding wine glasses when news spread of how his defense team tried to slander her because she drank. The moral double standards for women were widely rejected by the Kazakh society. Today, the deceptive behavior of both Bishay and his cousin Banov didn't sit well with the judge or jury. Quantik Bishay was found guilty of torture and murder. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for torture and 20 years for murder. The sentences were partially combined, resulting in a total of 24 years in prison. Additionally, Bazan Banov, the director of Gastrunner, was found guilty of knowingly hiding a serious crime. He was sentenced to 4 years in a medium-security prison with credit given for time already served. The tragic death of Saltanat Nukenova caused a firestorm of public outcry for significant legal reform for more severe criminal penalties in Kazakhstan. Saltanat law was pushed through the justice system and will come into effect in June 2024. Saltanat Nukenova, may you rest in peace and your death will not be in vain. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.